Writing brushes are no longer the everyday tool they once were, yet there is still considerable interest in them among calligraphers and collectors. Even so, will the art of making writing brushes survive? And what is it about the brushes made in Huzhou and Zhejiang province that makes them so special? Stay tuned for Huzhou writing brushes in our series Unique Handicrafts.
Writing brush, ink stick, ink slab, and paper. These are traditionally known as the four treasures of the study. 800 years ago, at the time of the Yuan dynasty, the finest writing brushes were made in Huzhou. Much more recently, a Huzhou writing brush has won a UNESCO award for outstanding handicrafts. At a time when writing brushes are no longer in common use, why would UNESCO choose to give this award? And what's so special about writing brushes made in Huzhou? Huzhou is in Zhejiang province on the southern shore of Lake Taihu. The city became a major producer of writing brushes around 1,000 years ago. The Wang Yi Pin writing brush store is located on the pedestrian street adjacent to the Hongqi Road in central Huzhou.
您好，请问需要些什么？
我听说你们家的店是湖笔最老的字号。
对，
我今天是专程来参观了解一下湖笔的。
好的，那我先跟您介绍一下湖笔的品种吧。
行。
像这支蓝龟，就是我们的比较小的一种湖笔。
哦，这么小？
对，这是用来描线的。然后像这支笔，就是比较大的一支尖毫笔。就是湖笔从。这是
最大的吗？
也不是最大的，还有更大的。
The shop sells more than 500 kinds of Huzhou writing brushes. They come in 4 major categories, depending what they're made from: goat's hair, weasel's hair, the hair of several kinds of animals, and rabbit's hair. From expert calligraphers to primary school students, there's a writing brush for everyone. Many scholars get the shop to make writing brushes to order. Huzhou writing brushes are as celebrated as Hui ink sticks, Shuan paper, and Duan ink slabs. The most common kind of Huzhou writing brush is made of goat's hair. Wang Yipin uses goat's hair from Nantong in Jiangsu province. A feature of Huzhou writing brushes is the tip of the bristle, which is colored and semi-transparent. A Huzhou writing brush is said to add grace and power to characters written with it. This is the writing brush workshop at the Wang Yipin store. The main steps in making a Huzhou writing brush are washing the hair, binding the bristle, selecting the shaft, and inscribing it. Each of these steps is divided into several lesser tasks, 120 of them in all. The attention to detail that goes into every one of these tasks is what makes Huzhou writing brushes the best in China. Washing the hair is critical to making a Huzhou writing brush. It's a time-consuming process that turns ordinary goat's hair into a semi-finished writing brush head. A single goat produces only 150 grams of hair suitable for using in the bristle of a writing brush, with only about 30 grams suitable for the brush tip. Bai Zhuyi, the great poet of the Tang Dynasty, wrote, "Only one of thousands of hairs is suitable for making a writing brush." Since only the hair growing in the goat's 4 leg pits can be used, it takes the hair from 1 or 2 goats to make the head of a good Huzhou writing brush. Zhu Ya-qin is the head of the production technology department at Wang Yipin. A master writing brush maker in Huzhou, she has spent years honing her skill and making writing brushes to perfection. The first step in the washing process is to remove the impurities and pick out the hairs with long and sturdy pointed ends. The second step is to card the goat's hairs with an ox bone comb. Ox bone is tough and ductile, and the comb doesn't damage the hair. Next, the pointed ends of a tuft of goat's hairs are aligned to make the head of the writing brush. It's a long-standing tradition among Huzhou writing brush makers for the woman to wash the goat's hair and the men to make the brush. In the old days, girls began washing the hair at a very young age. The women worked at least 10 hours a day, their hands constantly in water. Summer was the hardest time, when they had to rub talcum powder on their hands to keep them from breaking out in a rash. A certain etiquette governs the placement of the chair and basin and the technician's posture during the washing process.
下身稍微正一点，人斜着坐呢是靠近这个盆，侧。
老师，为什么要这样斜侧着做才可以，才是最好的姿势？
斜着坐呢，你这样呢，你这个身体能够靠近那个工序这个水盆，然后你正着坐呢，你这个膝盖固定住了，这个人靠不近了。
哦，隔远了。
对，然后你这个脚分开呢又太难看，不像那个做别的姿势了。
哦，要讲究优雅，
要讲究，对，是的，
Writing brushes are no longer the everyday tool they once were, yet there is still considerable interest in them among calligraphers and collectors. Even so, will the art of making writing brushes survive? And what is it about the brushes made in Huzhou and Zhejiang province that makes them so special? Stay tuned for Huzhou writing brushes in our series Unique Handicrafts.
The goat's hairs that are unsuitable for making the head of the writing brush, perhaps because their ends aren't sturdy or sharp enough, must be removed. The job looks simple, but it requires good eyesight, great patience, and a strong sense of responsibility.
你眼睛好，肯定比我看得见。这里面有白的毛不要挑出来，这个是没有风的。
A thin razor blade with a dull edge is used to pick out the hairs that don't have a pointed end. With the tip of good goat's hair, a writing brush can produce vigorous strokes.
这片到处都是，对吧？白的很多嘛。这个上面是
Selecting suitable goat's hair is only a tiny part of the washing process. It takes 3 years for an apprentice to master the skills.
学了1个多小时，你感受怎么样了？做毛笔？
感觉挺累的，坐在这儿，他的姿势要保持在一个状态，特别辛苦，而且要特别细心才可以。
Once suitable goat's hair is selected, it must be polished and bent. The tuft of goat's hairs Master Zhu is holding already looks like the tip of a writing brush. Now the base of the writing brush's head must be wrapped in a layer of goat's hair. After the hair is washed, the next step is to bind the head of the writing brush. It's a job that's much harder than it looks. Huzhou writing brushes come in various lengths and thicknesses. The smallest looks like a nail, and the largest like a wooden club. The worker must apply an even force when he binds the goat's hairs together. Too tight, and the tip of the writing brush will burst. Not tight enough, and the hairs will fall out. It's a job that needs to be done by experienced workers. Zhu Yaqin was born into a family of writing brush makers. As a little girl, she'd wash goat's hair with her mother. In the 1970s, her hometown Shanlian established a writing brush factory. 17-year-old Zhu Yaqin became an apprentice, learning how to make the heads of writing brushes.
我们纸笔呢，就是那个胶水嘛，这个胶水冬天是很冷的。 然后你热的时候还不能用，一定冷的时候用。这个热的时候、烫的时候，这支笔收不拢，一定要冷了这个浆糊才能收拢。这个冬天生冻长度是很多的。
Zhu Yaqin's apprenticeship lasted 3 years. She did so well that afterwards she was given the job of making magnolia pistol heads for top-grade writing brushes. An ordinary writing brush cost only a few cents at the time, but a magnolia pistol head writing brush sold for over 10 yuan. In the 1980s, the Wang Yipin writing brush store expanded production and invited Zhu Yaqin to come and work in Huzhou. Wang Yipin has received an order from Singapore for consignment of top-grade Huzhou writing brushes. The store has assigned Zhu Yaqin's father, who works in the store's factory in Shanlian, to make them. The town of Shanlian is located next to the Beijing-Hangzhou Grand Canal, about half an hour's drive from Huzhou. The annals of Huzhou Prefecture, dating from the Ming Dynasty, contains this entry. Writing brushes from Huzhou are known all over the country. Most are made in Shanlian village. There is a mountain called Hanshan next to the village. A Buddhist pagoda on its top is in the shape of a writing brush. Many of the leading Huzhou writing brush makers have stores on Huzhou Writing Brush Street in Shanlian, and most of them have workshops in the back. At one time, the nearby wharf on the Grand Canal was crowded with merchants coming from various parts of China to buy Huzhou writing brushes. Shen Jinhua, Zhu Yaqin's father, was born in 1933. His parents are famous writing brush makers. Their writing brushes are sold by large stores in Shanghai. However, it's an established practice in Shanlian that children are never apprenticed to their parents. At the age of 14, Shen Jinhua went to Suzhou to learn the craft from a writing brush maker who was also a native of Shanlian. Life was hard for apprentices at the time. In the first year, they had to do all the housework for their teachers, such as buying groceries and cooking.
这些教我呢，需要53个，这个是想要远。那当时个辰光小了，搿么出去玩，不像没呀，吃呀那个呀。搿辰光自家个思想上先爷娘当个光个，你要出去学生为了发会债、逃会债叫违他流关，我不这个。你要吃我就要吃高，否则你就非要去干呀，管好了去呀。
After completing his 3-year apprenticeship, Shen Jinhua returned to Shanlian to work. By the 1950s, realizing his skill was only sufficient to earn him a living but not make him famous, he decided to find another master to teach him more. This teacher was his mother's brother, Qian Lianzhong. The rules of the Writing Brush Makers Guild stipulate that one may have only one teacher in their life. Taking a second teacher required paying compensation to the first in the form of 200 kilograms of rice. It took all Shen Jinhua's savings to buy so much rice and send it to his first teacher. All the writing brushes made by Qian Lianzhong were purchased by the Dai Yue Xuan writing brush store in Beijing, which supplied many of the founders of the People's Republic of China.
老先生关照眼，这个尚未符合码好，一定要认真对待。这个你要码好之余呢，你到老的了，做好会做不来的。做你假使年纪一大，你可以做得好；你假使为年纪大上去了，可以做中档；中档再做不来，可以做低档。如果你可以需要想着松快点了做比较了。 如果你到老的不让你做完，但我到现在还是为止了，为好的生活还可以做。
Thanks to the excellent foundation acquired from his first teacher, Shen Jinhua took only a year and a half to complete his second apprenticeship. Before long, he was making a name for himself.
我到脑子里向了，这是喜欢做笔的，因为做笔呢，一个人不是体力劳动，是脑力劳动。那么你假使如果喜欢做笔了，你做笔里向没有学问，这个做得好做得坏了都有关系。那你做得好了，你走路出去了，到网庄里向了，人家蛮尊敬你的。你假使技术比较了，人家看不看你。
In the early 1980s, the 8 major Huzhou writing brush factories in Jiangsu and Zhejiang provinces held a writing brush making competition, It was won by Shen Jinhua.
Writing brushes are no longer the everyday tool they once were, yet there is still considerable interest in them among calligraphers and collectors. Even so, will the art of making writing brushes survive? And what is it about the brushes made in Huzhou and Zhejiang province that makes them so special? Stay tuned for Huzhou writing brushes in our series Unique Handicrafts.
Shen Jinhua is nearly 80 years old now, but still in good health. He is a technical consultant to Wang Yipin Writing Brush Store and director of the store's Shanlian Workshop, which specializes in making top-grade Huzhou writing brushes. He himself specializes in making writing brush heads. Shen Jinhua has a special tool for making writing brush heads, a short curved knife. He refines the half-finished head of a writing brush to bring it up to the required standard of sharpness, smoothness, roundness, and sturdiness. It's one of the most difficult steps in making writing brushes. He has to remove all the unsuitable hairs from the head, a task that requires good eyesight and a steady hand.
3年。
3年啊。
哎。
哦。
有的3年不一定做得好。
哦。
哎。
The last step in making the writing brush tip involves wiping the hair. A special kind of glue is used to stick the hairs on the brush tip together. The craftsman twists the hairs to identify and remove any remaining ones that are unsuitable. Then he smooths those that are left. There's a saying among writing brush makers: hair selection is 30% of making a good writing brush, hair wiping is 70%. The pure white color and the pleasant luster of the brush tip are achieved in the hair wiping. Shen Jinhua is making the heads of the brushes ordered by the Singaporean client. They are made of top-grade goat's hair and the shafts of rosewood. Eventually, an inscription will be carved on the shafts. Engraving the inscription is the final process in making a writing brush. The burins the engravers use come in various shapes and sizes. The engravers use them as appropriate to carve the Chinese characters according to the veins and texture of the wood of the shaft. They first carve the horizontal strokes and then the vertical strokes. The engraved Chinese characters are painted in gold. Now finished, the writing brushes are ready for packing in elegant boxes. The craft of making Huzhou writing brushes is in danger of extinction. 100 years ago, every family in Shanlian made writing brushes. But very few young people today want to learn how to do it. The Huzhou municipal government has recently adopted several measures aimed at supporting this unique craft. One of them is to give a monthly subsidy of 1,000 yuan for 3 years to new workers under the age of 35 who are hired by writing brush factories in Huzhou. Thanks to the writing brush, the traditional Chinese art of calligraphy and painting has become universally recognized. Huzhou writing brushes have been popular among Chinese scholars since the Yuan dynasty more than 800 years ago. Feng Hanjiang, chairman of the Huzhou Artists Association, says calligraphy written with a Huzhou writing brush can look as cracked as if it were blown by an autumn wind, or as smooth as if it were washed by the spring rain. As long as Chinese traditional culture continues to be passed down, the craft of making Huzhou writing brushes will remain. It's an art that uses no paints, but still reproduces the brilliant colors of nature. Instead, it uses nature itself. Mountains and rural scenes are vividly recreated from sandstone grit and grass stems. It's known as sandrock painting, and one Chinese artist is exclusively responsible for its development. Who is he and how did he create this uniquely Chinese art? Find out in sandrock painting in our unique handicraft series.